Live, local, late breaking. This is WPBF 25 News at 4.
Good afternoon and thank you for joining us for WPBF 25 News at 4. I'm Tiffany Kenny.
And I'm Felicia Rodriguez. We are tracking some strong storms in our area. Chief Certified Meteorologist Chris Martinez will break down how long those storms will last in just a few minutes.
But first, we are following breaking news at 4. The Department of Justice unsealing the grand jury indictment against former President Donald Trump.
The indictment is in connection with the handling of classified documents he took from the White House and kept at his Mar-a-Lago estate. We have team coverage. Our Terry Parker is in front of the federal courthouse in Miami, and our co-anchor Todd McDermott is outside of Mar-a-Lago. Todd?
Across the water here at Mar-a-Lago. As we now know, because the Department of Justice has released the indictment, it's 37 counts in all. As we've been saying, this is unprecedented, both for the Department of Justice and the United States of America, to have a former president charged with serious federal crimes. It has never happened before. It's the culmination of Special Counsel Jack Smith's investigation. He was actually appointed late last fall in November. The investigation into allegations that Donald Trump not only purposely mishandled and hid classified documents, but then lied about having those documents. Let's talk about what we know today. Again, Donald Trump now charged in a 37-count federal indictment. Most 31 of them regard illegal handling of those highly classified materials. He also faces a count of conspiracy to obstruct justice. Conspiracy would mean that someone else is involved, someone else is charged. We'll have more on that in just a few minutes. According to documents, Mr. Trump stored boxes in various locations at the Mar-a-Lago estate, including the ballroom, a bathroom, the shower, and again, other places as well. Prosecutors say in May 2021, Donald Trump brought some of those boxes to his Bedminster Golf Club in New Jersey. Trump admitted knowing he had classified documents with him at Mar-a-Lago after leaving the White House. And in an audio recording, Trump is heard saying he, as president, quote, "I could have declassified, but now I can't," aware of the law. Last year, the former president and the National Archives were locked in a months-long dispute over whether he returned all government records as required by law. The indictment raised that at one point he asked, "What if we just ignore that subpoena?" A federal judge later authorized an FBI search of Mar-a-Lago, which turned up more than 100 classified records. That was last August, just think, almost a year ago now. Donald Trump has continued to deny any allegations of wrongdoing. Today we heard from Special Counsel Jack Smith.
Laws that protect national defense information are critical to the safety and security of the United States, and they must be enforced. Violations of those laws put our country at risk. Adherence to the rule of law is a bedrock principle of the Department of Justice, and our nation's commitment to the rule of law sets an example for the world. We have one set of laws in this country, and they apply to everyone.
And again, as we told you last night at 11 o'clock and earlier during breaking news, Donald Trump will be summoned to the federal courthouse in Miami at 3 p.m. Tuesday. That's where we find our Terry Parker to talk about what's next for the former president. Terry?
Todd, this Miami federal courthouse is where former President Donald Trump will appear Tuesday afternoon to be formally arraigned on that 37-count criminal indictment, which was just unsealed this afternoon after being handed up by a grand jury here last night. As you've heard, Mr. Trump says he is innocent of concealing those classified documents and the other charges. When he appears in Miami federal court Tuesday, he will be formally arraigned on the 37 counts pending against him, and he will likely plead not guilty. The judge assigned initially to the case, Eileen Cannon, was appointed by Trump and made several rulings favorable to him on the case during the initial investigation seeking to retrieve the documents. She will likely allow Trump to return home to Mar-a-Lago and prepare for trial, with some possible conditions on his release, such as what is he allowed to say publicly and perhaps some international travel restrictions. And it is unclear if Cannon will remain on the case for the entire trial. She's usually assigned to the Fort Pierce District Court, and there is speculation that the trial itself may be held there or even in Palm Beach County, home to Mar-a-Lago. Live in Miami, I'm Terry Parker. Todd, back to you.
All right, Terry, thank you. And again, the point's also been made that Miami has actually had trials of this magnitude before, and that also could be the best place to hold this, in the large federal courthouse with heavy security there. It remains to be seen right now. We're learning that, as I mentioned earlier, an aide to President Trump connected to that conspiracy charge is also indicted as of today in connection with taking the classified documents, moving them and hiding them. Walt Nauta served as a valet in the Trump White House and left his role to join Donald Trump as a personal aide early in 2021. Nauta's indictment is the second in the special counsel investigation. Investigators say Nauta moved boxes of those classified materials before the FBI searched Mar-a-Lago to hide them last year. The specific charges against Nauta have not been fully revealed at this time. Meanwhile, two of Trump's top lawyers resigned today from his defense team after learning Trump and his aide were indicted. Now, Jim Trusty, who appeared on CNN last night in defense of the former president, is now leaving his employ, as well as John Rowley. They say they will no longer represent Donald Trump in matters being investigated and prosecuted by the special counsel Jack Smith. In their place, the former president says Todd Blanche will lead his legal team, along with a legal team to be named later. We also know, as Terry mentioned, that U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon will be assigned to oversee the former president's case, at least at this point. That's according to the summons sent to Trump and his legal team. That would mean that Cannon could oversee a case in which she might end up handing down a sentence at some point, but it is unclear right now if she would actually oversee the entire trial, if it should ever get that far. She was previously reprimanded by a higher court for giving the former president preferential treatment. For now, I'm Todd McDermott live across from Mar-a-Lago. Much more coming up in the next half hour and throughout our newscast this afternoon and this evening. Felicia, Tiffany, back to you.
All right, Todd, thank you. Meanwhile, President Biden is in North Carolina to tout his economic agenda and pledge support to military families. And while there, reporters asked him if he has spoken to Attorney General Merrick Garland about the indictment, and he said, quote, "I have not spoken to him at all, and I'm not going to speak with him. I have no comment on that." All right, switching gears. It is hot and humid, and we may have some storms in the area.
Looks like it on the radar. Chris, how long will they stick around?
After about 8 o'clock again. It's like clockwork this time of year. Some heavy downpours continue to quickly move through the area. Everything behave themselves, so that's good news. But you can see again, hit or miss here or there. I got a pretty decent cluster of showers just towards the south and east of Belle Glade. Then we go up towards the Treasure.